Hello, you are listening to the Gamer Librarian Podcast, the best podcast you can find on this side of the multiverse. I am your host Adrian, and today I have a plethora of new video game news to talk about. We had so many games be announced and unveiled this weekend. I am so excited to talk to you about everything. We are back in the original recording studio, my room, glorious. Hopefully, still trying to find a place to move out into, an apartment or a house, but things aren't looking, like they're affordable right now, but that's all right. In the meantime, I am playing Final Fantasy XIV and reading Foundation and Empire by Isaac Asimov, as I mentioned in the last episode. That's what I've been doing for the entirety of the last few weeks, and hopefully, I'm going to try and finish the Foundation series before we get into some of the much longer series that I plan on reading between now and some of the later game releases. And I reached Final Fantasy XIV's Shadowbringers expansion. Thank God. Heavensward and Stormblood were so great, and I still haven't even done all of the dungeons necessarily with all the blue quests and everything. That's what I'm doing right now, rounding those up in the spare time that I have between queues and other duties with the MSQ. But right now, it's just blasting through Shadowbringers, and that's just about it. Everything's working out. We're trying to do all that before Elden Ring's Shadow of the Erdtree DLC comes out. And I believe less than a week. I think it's the 25th or so. It's like next Friday or so. I'm going to make sure that I got Elden Ring downloaded on the PS5 as soon as that comes out. That is all I'm playing. Take a small break from Final Fantasy, but I'm still going to try to get to the Dawn Trail expansion by the end of the Shadow of the Erdtree so that way I can be prepared for it. So that's what I'm expecting. So the meat of it, a lot of things were actually announced and shown off for the most part during the last few days. We had Summer Game Fest, Microsoft's little showcase, Ubisoft, even some smaller stuff like PC Game Show and all that. And big titles were unveiled to return for the most part, like Civilization 7 and Doom, Gears of War, Black Ops was always teased, and even Prince of Persia got a remake kind of announced, which is pretty cool. I would have liked to see maybe a little more gameplay from a lot of other things, specifically like, Civ 7 and Gears of War E-Day. I'm a huge Gears of War fan, and simply the announcement of this game is going to cause me to go into shock. I'm actually pretty glad that they're going, back to a prequel kind of era, especially E-Day. That's, people like to talk that Gears of War is a horror kind of game, but the scariness of it is part of it. I wouldn't necessarily call it like a scary game, maybe for some people in some aspects, but it definitely has that like horror element instilled into it, which is cool. But I just like the setting of Gears like prior one a lot more than the newer stuff. I mean, all the newer characters with like Marcus's son and all of his friends, like that's all cool. I especially like the enemies, the swarm, the glowing red enemies mostly, and even some of the robots that they have, kind of faux different type of enemy that they have. But I definitely miss the days of like the locusts and even the lambent kind of times. That's all I kind of miss. It would be nice to have like an amalgamation of all that in some kind of way, but we're not really gonna get that. And I'm still looking forward to what they're going to do for this because it looks like it's going to be a completely new telling of Gears of War because we've never specifically seen anything regarding E-Day in any way. Maybe a little bit in Gears of War the Slab and maybe some other flashbacks with some of the other Gears of War media. But for the most part, we don't really see Gears of War E-Day in any way. There's not a lot that we have seen for it, especially because it's a very difficult time for people living on Sarah. I mean, locusts just popping up everywhere, doing the thing, killing everybody. I think there's even a prequel DLC for Gears 3, right, where you play as Barrack and stuff. I think that's during E-Day, so there's even some prequel stuff in the games for E-Day, which is kind of cool. I'm definitely gonna have to go back and replay everything to get a full judgment. Judgment, like the Gears of War Judgment, that's a great game. I've totally forgot about that game. That's a E-Day kind of esque the setting game for Gears of War, right? Yeah. That's like the fourth game. Oh, I'm definitely gonna replay all those games. I think it's one, two, three, Judgment, and then four, five, and I think that's about it, right? They remade the Gears of War one into like a newer game, right? They remade that. I think I got that free on the Xbox. That's pretty cool. So yeah, certainly looking forward to getting back into Gears of War and what they're going to have in store for us that's new for Gears of War E-Day. New weapons, new maps or things to do, all that kind of stuff is really fun. But I'm looking forward to like new characters, like bring back Carmine or Carmine-esque characters, stuff like that. Hoffman, bring him back. It's definitely gonna be cool to see Dom back. It's not spoilers, but he doesn't make it throughout the whole series. I'll just say that for people who haven't really been up to the 15, 20-year legacy of Gears of War. So I'm not gonna get into full spoilers, but go play Gears of War if you haven't, experienced it. If you want to know what it is about from, Gears of War E-Day, start with Gears of War 1 or the remake that they put out, and just play it or look up a book or something for it because it's fun. Gears of War is a fun franchise in my opinion. Probably like their Microsoft's like forgotten child compared to Halo, and I hopefully it doesn't turn out like a Halo Infinite situation where it's just it's missing features from previous iterations. Like this game did have split screen co-op for most of its stuff. I mean, cooperation is incorporated in its core campaign from the first game. It's kind of dwindled for the most part, but some of these games just haven't really kept up to their legacy from some of the times that they've been around. And let's not forget about horde mode. Gears of War 2 practically besides Halo with what is it, Firefight, and some other games here and there with kind of survival based stuff. But 2.0 really like solidified the multiplayer online survival stuff. I mean, I remember besides Call of Duty Zombies, which Black Ops 6 was also talked about and shown off throughout the weekend, and we saw a little bit snippets of Zombies. And horde mode was the pinnacle like survival based stuff for online playing. I remember that playing with random people and just trying to get to round 50 or higher. I think they started having higher rounds in Gears 2, and that stuff was crazy, and those were hard. Having to deal with boomers and reavers, and the crafting stuff that they had for Gears 3 was absolutely crazy. I loved it. I like systems like that, arcade systems. Call of Duty Zombies has that, and Firefight kind of had that to a point, but Halo doesn't have Firefight anymore. Halo doesn't even have really good similar matchmaking or multiplayer to the other games, and it's just not the same. Video games just aren't the same, and they kind of lose touch if they're trying to make games based off of older franchises for newer audiences, which is what the feeling is that people are getting for Dragon Age Veilguard. This is a game a franchise that hasn't been seen in 15 years, 10 years since Dragon Age Inquisition, so 10 years, and not counting some smaller stuff in the middle, which is mostly just for already hardcore fans like myself, like books and the Netflix show and all that kind of stuff. You know, this is the first time we've seen a Dragon Age game in 10 years, and it doesn't necessarily give the same vibes as Inquisition did back then. And I know some people are kind of upset about the game kind of shifting from the more dark, gritty like tone that they initially instill in the games, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I kind of think you can kind of get that the same way, and I kind of still believe they're gonna have some of that doom and gloom, and that some of that's portrayed by like how the characters are written and portrayed and acting in the world. But I will say this, at the very least, it does seem like Dragon Age Veilguard is very similar to Dragon Age Inquisition 2, with the veil being the big overarching like thing to worry about, like breaking or being broken. I mean, that was the same plot for Inquisition. That really was. You had Corvus or whatever the dog spawn like messing with you, and you had the fate like with your hand and all those powers. And this game just kind of feels like, oh, the Veil's in trouble again. Which if you played the other games, Dragon Age 1 is mostly Darkspawn, which is a very overarching, extremely evil force within the actual plot and lore of the game. And then Dragon Age 2 kind of is more like a smaller centered, like this is a city with like a very crucial power dynamic that's happening, which is in my opinion really cool. I like Dragon Age 2 for that reason. It may not have the kind of same RPG elements that some other Dragon Age games have, or even other RPGs like exploration or different like areas to explore. I do like the centered city scope, but I wish the city in that game changed a lot more based on your choices. That's all I'll say for that. And then Inquisition was definitely like a very similar kind of style to Dragon Age Origins, but it definitely had less of a doom and gloom kind of this needs to be like the main focus uh centered idea or like mission for the group, or like Origins had, or even kind of Dragon Age 2 to some degree, even some other games. Like to me, Skyrim felt that way, where Skyrim's like overarching story, and Fallout 4, like the your baby being kidnapped, like some of those stories just feel far more important than doing some of the side stuff and like going and making decisions based on what you where you're going to travel and do. Some of that just seems like far more important, and that kind of you get that translated into things like tabletop RPGs and D&D and like playing with different groups. And that's kind of the beauty of Dragon Age in a way, is that you have that gameplay where as a player, as like your kind of like, your voice in this game, you have a voice in this game, so you like the things you say are interacting into the like the world, so the world like responds and interacts based on what you say. And that's kind of the beauty of Dragon Age, and they didn't really show that in the trailer that they put out, this weekend. They really just focused on the graphics and the story, like in a really weird way, in my opinion. And then like the gameplay was, not really great. The gameplay was certainly different from what we've seen in Dragon Age. It definitely seems, not as fun or interesting as Dragon Age Inquisition, a game that 10 years ago. It doesn't really seem like that, especially like the tactical stuff being not really there. They didn't show switching between characters and the different classes, which was what all the Dragon Age games is. It's just like it's very similar to Baldur's Gate 3, just a very minimal, more smaller scale, less D&D focused Baldur's Gate kind of game. And I was really hoping for Dragon Age to, be like a Baldur's Gate esque kind of game when it returned, and it doesn't seem like that. It seems like it's a action oriented RPG, and that seems okay. But and that's different, and that's doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but it doesn't really instill the same kind of vibes that I got from past iterations. And when we're not seeing other things in the game that we are presumed to expect, we get left wanting, or thinking that they're just not going to show up, like choices in the game mattering, and they didn't really delve into how the past choices based on what you did in the past games are going to affect this game. That was a big thing for the last three games, and I know that like they have canon, events, things like certain characters who may have been dead or not from the first game on, and then returning just for whatever, and those kind of decisions not really being reflected. They kind of have those kind of actions, and that's understandable for a storytelling perspective. But when you kind of make the people who've played your games, the people who've made you what you were for the last 15 or so years, and that legacy is there, you kind of want to honor that. And they didn't really delve into that for the whole part. But I think there's an article, and I'll link it, that I'd read throughout the week, that they said that they at least going to have a way to have your choices be implemented through it, even though they didn't show it during the initial trailer, which I think they should have, because they already had Dragon Age Keep. Like, you already have that, and there's a lot of other people talking about Dragon Age all over the internet, with like whether or not it's really hitting home with core fans, legacy fans, or the newer audience. And I don't really know. I really don't know. I think that if it's overall, has a story and a way to interact with that story that feels like it's, in the Dragon Age world, and you're kind of making the same kind of scoped decisions, whether big or small, rather than just romancing your character, which is like not the main focus of the game. It's kind of like a side activity, which you can do. And I won't get into like anything about whether or not you can or can't, or who you shouldn't in games. I'm always open to that just being the biggest option ever. Just do what you want in the game. But I would rather it be done well and make sense, rather than it just be forced in for the sake of trying to meet expectations, numbers, or money, that kind of thing. And I want it to be done because it makes sense in the game, and it's fun to do in the game. Like Dragon Age Origins had a gift system, which allowed your companions to like you a little more based on whatever actions you've already chosen. And I don't think that system went into Inquisition. I know it's in 2 to a smaller degree, but I don't think they returned it in Inquisition. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I devoted another 180 hours into Inquisition, but I'm uncertain what they're really doing about that. And you know, that's Dragon Age. It's Veilguard. It's the game that we've been waiting literally 10 years for, and it's may have maybe not been, some everybody's expectations. It certainly didn't meet mine to a degree, but I am happy to see it to like personally to myself, and I am excited to see what it ends up being in a like an end product. But certainly what they've shown off now does not instill like really good promise to me. So the best thing I could hope for is by the time it comes around to releasing, they either show off more of the game, like more gameplay that makes it seem like it's, more similar to the rest of the games prior, or that they're going to have, more like better classes to show off, like the mage abilities or the warrior, or even new classes, in my opinion. More of the races, maybe even better places to see, because it was like a nighttime during the trailer that they had, and there was like storms and lightning and all kinds of stuff happening. Maybe show off a little more, maybe even show off familiar areas. This game, I believe, is set in Tevinter, which is a completely new setting for a game. Specifically, you do see Tevinter in the side content, and it may be going back to some of the older, more familiar settings, Ferelden, Orlais, those kind of places. It might have been a little more not as hard to understand or accept for, I guess, newer fans or older fans, or whoever's like having trouble understanding or accepting this game for what they've shown off. But I'm trying to keep an open mind for it because I love Dragon Age, and I think that, BioWare as a company might try a little harder to like not just meet expectations, but try to indulge a way of, respecting what happened over the last 10 years with their other games, Andromeda and Anthem. And, to a degree, Dragon Age 2, there's a lot of turmoil with that game's development, even though it came, like Mass Effect 3, or I'm sorry, Mass Effect 2 came out right after that. And then 3 had even a turmoilless, like, development, which has, its own problems. But not even to speak on like what EA could be involved with like its development as a publisher. I'm just saying that I'm trying to keep an open mind for what BioWare is trying to put out, and I'm looking for the best. And so that's what I want to talk about is the Road to Dragon Age Veilguard that I'm going to try and do around the time that game releases or comes out. Is I'm going to try and go through all the current media that's already out for Dragon Age. For my count, it's like 3 video games, Origins 2 and Inquisition, a movie, a TV show, the Netflix like TV show, I think, and then 6 books and 7 comics, which I've read about a handful of the books, 3, Asunder and like a Stolen Throne, I think it's called, and then I read one of the comics, Maid's Killer, like glancingly at it, and I think there's a lot more. So I'm looking forward to getting into those. Yeah, so I'm still hopeful for Dragon Age to, be the game that I was always a fan of playing since I was like a younger teenager. It was not too long ago. I was like 11 or 12. But there's a lot in those games that I am fond of. I'm fond of the characters. I want to see where those characters have gone, especially when it comes to them like returning and we haven't seen some of them. There's many plot lines that haven't been finished. Not even just like for side content. I mean like main core game. Inquisition extends one of the main plot lines that's from Origins, and just does it in such a way that I want more. I legitimately want more, and there's so much that they have to at least, not just reference for at least I think legacy fans, because even like Solus being this faux villain in the trailer, I don't think he's the villain in this game. He doesn't seem like the villain. It just doesn't, really vibe with me. He was a companion in the last game. For the most part, it doesn't really check out. I think it's just gonna turn into him being another, hero in the end or some nonsense. And maybe if it's really bad, he just becomes like the last like returning companion of the game. Maybe it's just like Varric, Solus, and like someone else. Ooh, that would suck. You have a legacy of these characters. Don't just make these new characters, which are cool and all. I haven't researched who the newer characters specifically are. We might have seen them in older stuff like the Netflix show and some of the comics and stuff. It's been a while. I think Lucian is the Maid's Killer is what they're calling him. I have to re-educate myself into that. So yeah, what are you guys looking forward to that was announced over the last weekend? What games are excited or exciting you that you really want to at least try out and play? What games were you missing? What kind of games did you were hoping that you would see a little more of? I know for me personally, I kind of would like to see something specifically about Star Wars: The Old Republic MMO, but that's I think that game's dead. I think that game's dead in the water. I think nobody cares about it. That's just me. But what else has got you guys all excited? And what franchises are you reading? Are you guys reading any books? Reading any comics? What are you guys doing? Currently working on the podcast, being on other platforms, working with some distributor right now, and we're seeing how that goes. And so keep on the lookout for these podcast episodes showing up on other platforms because I want to try and get that out to as much people as possible. YouTube is still pretty good; it's free for everybody and available. I'm pretty sure everywhere. But it's definitely nice to have this available in other regions and certainly other ways. And I'm not sure how, but I definitely want to get this out as to as many people as possible. Talk to you guys in so many different ways and tell me what you're talking about or what you're playing, so we can talk about it. That's just what I'm trying to do with everybody. So, if you're looking forward to anything coming out, uh, like, subscribe, follow, do whatever you got to do to keep up with me on the latest video game news and be on my journey where I try to play as many games and read as many books as possible and just experience all these different things. That's really just all that's been. This really has just been episode 37. We're nearing 50. It's only 13 or 12 so away. That's not terrible. That's definitely doable this year. So I'm excited. And I'm looking forward to getting to talk about my journey with the Dragon Age franchise, the Gears of War franchise, and the future expansions for games, DLC, everything with everybody. So, you know, be safe. Have a good one, everybody.